are in, we could say, inconvenient time zones that may be the middle of the night or early in the morning. And so, yeah, thank you for joining us. So this is, I guess, this is a photo of the members of the collective at our last meetup here at Purdue. We always take 2 photos, one serious and one goofy photo, and we always use the goofy one and throw out the serious one. So this is our last photo. Our plan for today, hopefully you have a link to these slides so you can follow along, but is to have brief introduction and orientation. I wish we had time to meet all of you. We don't, unfortunately, to have everyone introduce themselves, but we'll at least introduce the faculty and hopefully give you a chance to get to know a little bit more about us and what we're doing. We then, as part of the sign-up sheet, got a bunch of your questions. We've started to provide answers to those. We can go over some of those, talk through some of those, and as well as answer other questions that come up during this meeting. Please feel free to use the chat, and we can kind of try and monitor that as well. And then in the end, we'll have breakouts with current student group members broken out by the school that they go to. So that's the plan. Anything to add? Does that sound all right? Okay, so what are we? What is the Community Data Science Collective? There aren't too many, institutions, organizations that resemble it. What is this weird thing? So it's a multidisciplinary, multi-institution group that researches mostly online communities, attention, participation, governance, and learning in online spaces. That we mostly use quantitative computational methods, although that mostly is doing a lot of work there. I think that there's a lot of work that we do that is qualitative and experimental and doesn't neatly fit into either of those buckets. And then sort of like broadly, social science work, social computing work, and learning science work. I think that's a pretty good, although all of those boundaries are pretty fuzzy, and there are people who do different things at different times, but that's a good core of what we do. There were originally 2 faculty members, Aaron Shaw and Mako Hill. That list has grown. The rest of us are kind of graduates of the program that are now faculty kind of all around the US. And so maybe it makes sense for those of us who are here to do a brief introduction. That's all right. We can just go in this alphabetical order. Kaylee?
Sure. So apologies, I have a bit of a cold. Might not sparkle as much as usual. I'm Kaylee Champion. I'm at UW-Bothell in computing and software systems. So essentially, I'm a computer scientist trained as a social scientist, and eager to hear what questions people have and tell you more about what we do at Bothell. Thanks.
Thanks, Kaylee. And luckily, I realized I forgot to introduce myself. So I am Jeremy Foote. So I'm the second person there. I'm assistant professor in the Brian Lamb School of Communication at Purdue University. I mostly study Reddit these days. I've been doing more and more about sort of like small communities, and then sort of what people's motivations are for what they do online, and how individual motivations and changes to behavior can influence kind of broader systems. Ryan.
Yeah, hey, I am Ryan Funkhauser, and I'm a new faculty member at the University of Idaho. I got my PhD at Purdue working with Jeremy, working under Jeremy. So there's definitely some connections there. I don't oversee graduate students here at my position at the University of Idaho, but my work focuses on communication across lines of ideological difference in online spaces. So a lot of focus on Reddit and kind of deliberative communication. So always happy to kind of work with and collaborate with people, even though not working directly with grad students here at the University of Idaho. But yeah, a little bit about me.
Hello, everybody. I am Benjamin Mako Hill. I'm here in lab with a couple other people, which is why my little name tag on Jitsi is a little bit different. But I'm an associate professor of communication, and I also have appointments in the departments of human-centered design and engineering, computer science and engineering, and the information school here at the University of Washington. And I think that I'm interested in online communities like a lot of the people here. I'm in particular interested in communities that are engaged in like the production of sort of digital public goods. And I'm increasingly interested in questions of governance and sort of how governance challenges change over communities' life cycles.
Hi, folks. I am Aaron Shaw, he, him. I work at Northwestern University, where I have many affiliations, a subset of which are listed on the slide. I mostly work for doctoral students. I mostly work with students affiliated with the Media, Technology, and Society, or MTS, as well as the Technology and Social Behavior, or TSB, programs. And I think it's probably a little futile for me to try to summarize research interests in a way that will meaningfully differentiate me from other people on the call terribly well. What else? I think that's good enough for now. I'll pass it off to Nate.
I don't know if I saw Nate. Yeah, Nate, are you here?
Maybe no Nate.
Maybe
Okay.
no Nate. Okay.
I'll do my best Nathan Duplantis impression very quickly. If I were Nathan Duplantis, I would say that I was based at the University of Texas at Austin in the School of Information, and interested in a range of kinds of things. Like, this is the increasingly difficult to differentiate ourselves kind of issue applies here as well. But I think in particular interested in questions related to relationships between ongoing communities, and questions related to measurement error, especially in the context of like machine learning systems and using machine learning systems as a way of dealing with measurement and adjusting for those. So sort of methodological issues as well, which is something that Nate, I think, has done a great job of. Cool.
Thank you. Yeah, so that's the faculty. There are also a lot of students connected to the group. We have a people page on our wiki I encourage you to look at and read about, and you'll see that the student interests are even broader than those represented here. So yeah, so which leads to this next question. What kind of work happens in the CDSC? The short answer is lots and lots of different kinds of work. But in general, I think one of the nice things about doing social science work, unlike, I'm at Purdue, we're kind of a big engineering school. I didn't have to, get a big engineering grant to pay $10 million for a piece of equipment that all my students then have to use, or it'd be a waste of that money. Students can study the things that they want to. And so, our role is often to encourage and help them to do the things they want to and that they're interested in. And so, yeah, so we want to talk about a few projects, one from each of three of our institutions that sort of spans some of the range of the kind of research that happens. So we have, I don't know if Zorene's successful. Okay, great. So I won't give away too much here. That's sort of the high level, and I'll just let each of the students spend just a few minutes talking about these projects. And then when we do breakouts, you're welcome to ask more questions about them. So Zorene, yeah, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Zorene. I'm a PhD student at the University of Washington. My research focuses a lot on information manipulation, things like disinformation, sometimes misinformation. But I'm less interested in questions of the actual content, and more interested in how those challenges affect governance in online communities, and particularly communities that steward these digital knowledge goods. So one project I'm working on now is looking at attacks on different kinds of public knowledge institutions. Comparing Wikipedia as like an example of an online distributed organization, and more traditional public media organizations like NPR and PBS. And while those organizations are very different in form, they're currently in the United States, at least, facing very similar attacks to their legitimacy from various political actors who are trying to defund them, or attacking their credibility in the perceived credibility in the eyes of the public. So the project I'm working on now with Mako kind of develops this theory of thinking about knowledge, governance, and legitimacy as three resources within these embedded within these institutions, and it kind of talks about how those intersect. So yeah, I would say that the main thing that is a little different about this project from a lot of the work in the CDSC is it's not quantitative at all, and it is mostly conceptual and theoretical. So yeah, if you're interested in that kind of work, I'm happy to talk about it later.
Thank you so much, Lorraine. Yeah, so yeah, thanks. Again, I wish we could just have a big research presentation and talk about all of this work more, but this is really just a taste test. So Matt, you want to go ahead with yours?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Matt. I am a PhD student at Northwestern, and today I'll talk a little bit about some work that myself, Kaylee Soyun, who is a part of the group at Northwestern, and then currently is a postdoc at Princeton, and Aaron worked on looking at the introduction of documentation files to open source software projects. And I'll try to focus on the process of working across institutions, because I know that is kind of a unique aspect of the CDSC. But a little bit of background on the project is that our motivation was that there's a lot of recommendations, or like kind of institutional recommendations for open source software projects to publish documentation in order to recruit new contributors or solicit contribution activity. There's a lot less, while there are a lot of recommendations, there's a lot less kind of evaluation of whether or not publishing documentation actually does that. So we used a data set of Debian projects, which is actually a data set initially that Kaylee had collected for her under production work. So some earlier work, there was a data set that we started with, and through weekly Jitsi meetings, a lot of async messaging on Matrix or Element, and using a lot of other workshop slots. So again, kind of like the remote critique, we worked on the project. And then during crunch time, things got a lot more synchronous and a lot more kind of constant messaging. But for a long time, it was a lot of async, sharing notes, sharing repos, stuff like that. So what we found using some longitudinal mixed effects modeling, as well as some topic modeling, and then finally a little bit of like qualitative analysis of the documents that were introduced to projects, was that doc publication precedes a decline in commit activity. And a lot of this, well, I don't want to speculate. There's more details on the interpretation and on the analysis in the paper. And the more kind of like functionally focused the document is, the more the documentation talks about specific kind of procedure within the project, the less the slope, the less the slope of the decline is following publication. And yeah, I mean, I think that's what I have. I'm really happy to talk more about this, but that's the 5-minute pitch.
Thanks, Matt. And for the last one, Loizos.
Yeah, hi folks. I'm Loizos. I'm a PhD student at Purdue, working under Jeremy Food, and I'm presenting here some work that we're doing currently at Purdue. So we're studying toxicity diffusion in Reddit, taking a complex systems lens. So these essentially allows us to study toxicity online as a phenomenon that spreads across individual interactions, so person to person, but also as a group level phenomenon that's emergent, where you have toxicity spreading across subreddits in the case of Reddit. And the way we're doing this is we're modeling hypergraphs. So these are essentially generalizations of networks or graphs where nodes are users on Reddit and hyperedges are groups of users, in the case of Reddit, subreddits. The model we're using is an epidemiological model for contagion and diffusion, the SIS, which stands for susceptible, infected, susceptible, where some users are susceptible to becoming toxic and other users are quote unquote infected with toxicity. And that allows you to let the system progress over time, and then you can study the diffusion of toxicity using making the distinctions between one-to-one diffusion, one-to-many, and many-to-one. And you can measure all sorts of different things, proportion of toxic users over time, and study the dynamics of toxicity.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks. Hopefully that gives you just a little sense of some of the stuff that we are working on or have worked on recently in the past. But there's lots and lots of other things. So if you have the link to the slides, go look at our wiki, the people page, the publications page, our blog, our Zenodo. These all are good resources for learning a bit more about the research of the group, finding people that might be a good fit with some of your interests. So we're actually doing pretty good on time. That's about right. So the next section, we wanted to have a little Q&A. So some of this we tried to, as people submitted questions along with registering, and Aaron and I organized those into sort of sections, and faculty and students tried to give at least initial answers to a lot of those. So there's a link there. I'll put the link in the chat as well to this Etherpad that has, a draft of answers to a bunch of questions. So I'd encourage you to look for, the questions that you had. Yeah, Aaron.
Oh, no, I didn't mean to interrupt. Sorry. I was just going to say that I've been actively typing more into these as we sit here, and welcome other faculty and student members of the group to do so also. I think the reality for many of these questions is that they're hard, amorphous questions that don't have a single answer, or where the answer from one faculty person is not conclusive or the singular truth or something like that. So I think we'll take, as Jeremy is sort of indicating, take these as our good first, good faith effort attempt at trying to respond. But our responses are neither universal, even within the group, nor sort of gospel in any objective sense. So yeah, that was all I wanted to mention. Thanks, Jeremy.
No, thank you, Aaron. That's great. Yeah, I think that maybe a good strategy for right now is, people can look for, sometimes I combine questions or generalize them. You might not quite recognize the question or questions that you submitted, but hopefully you see something close to what you submitted or other things that are useful. But maybe I'll suggest that people take a look at that document and either raise your hand or type something in the chat if you have follow-up questions or additional questions, or we didn't answer your question and you want an answer. And then maybe while we are waiting for direct questions in that way, maybe it would be helpful to talk a little bit about admissions processes or questions. There were a lot of questions about that. It seems like that'd be a nice something to get out of this pretty concrete thing that we could help with. And so I can say a little bit about Purdue. One of the, I'm trying to think of the kind of the high level things that I think you might want to know. One is that our process has changed slightly. One reason that we're holding this meeting a little earlier than we have in the past is that Purdue is going to start looking at applications on October 15th. I basically until December 1st. I think that as long as folks get an application in before December 1st, it will be seen by people for sure, and it will be considered. But I think the earlier the better, and things that come in a little bit earlier will fare a little bit better potentially, or we'll get eyes on them earlier. The second thing about Purdue, to give a little more about our process, things get sent out to faculty. Faculty sort of, kind of randomly selected subgroup look at them, give some evaluations, and then a committee comes and sort of makes decisions based on a little bit based on different units. So when you apply, you'll apply to a unit. I'm affiliated with organizational communication and media technology and society. The MTS one often gets more applicants. So it's, if you feel like you are at all closer to OrgComm, then that's probably a good choice. The only other thing I can think of that's maybe good, useful FAQ is that our TOEFL requirements are quite high at Purdue, that for international students who don't speak English as a first language, we require an 80 overall and a 27 for speaking, which is really quite high compared to other places. There's a little bit of wiggle room. If you're quite close to that, like 26 or 25, then that you may be able to sneak in or take a test after you get here, et cetera. So that's the kind of overall things that may be useful. Again, if you have specific questions, please ask them either in the chat or raise your hand. I don't know if other, Aaron or Mako want to give info.
I have one question. I was looking for exactly this question in the list and I haven't seen it yet, but I'm going to answer it anyway, because it's a question you should have asked, which is, which program should I apply to? Because there are, of course, many different programs that are represented here. And even in some cases, for example, Aaron and I are involved in multiple PhD programs. I guess that I have two sort of answers to that. Is that one, I think that if you're interested in applying, I think that you, generally speaking, you can apply to multiple PhD programs. And I know that many people that are here have come because they're interested in working with going to a particular program or working with a particular faculty. A number of people have emailed me and I've said, well, listen, I can't be one-on-one, but I'm happy to meet, but I'm happy if we're gonna have this recruiting event, you can come to this event here. And what I would encourage everyone to do is to really strongly consider applying to the other programs, not the one that you maybe were necessarily thinking about, right? Because I think that every one of us works, and you've even seen this in the example of the projects that are here. There's working across campuses and across faculty. Even if you really just want to work with one person, one way to do that may be through sort of coordination across campuses. I met with a student who came to this event last year and who applied to one program and who didn't get into that one program, but would have been happy in the other programs. And I think would have had a very good chance, right? I think that graduate admissions is it can be tough, and it involves and it can in the sense that I think that many of our programs are going to admit small handfuls of students. And I think that at any individual campus, there might only be a single student who's admitted into a particular program to work with the CDSC next year, right? And that decision is not going to be made, even if you're confident that you're the best, right? That also doesn't, and even if you're right that you're the best, in some objective sense, you have really great test scores, you've published a paper, whatever, right? I think that these decisions about who to admit, there's a lot of kind of backroom, kind of sometimes it's not exactly horse trading, but there's you have to build a committee among different kinds of people. Someone may have admitted more of students or one kind of student who does one kind of thing. And so I think that there's a lot of randomness and stuff that you can't control, and even stuff that we as faculty might not know about how the admissions process is going to go right now. And I think that part of one thing you can do to help manage that process is to apply to multiple kinds of multiple project campuses and multiple programs, and to take the time to understand why those particular programs might be a good fit. And so if you came here because you wanted to go to, whatever, University of Washington and a particular PhD program here, my advice is that if you want to do the kind of work that, for example, you wanted to be advised by me, there's a reasonably good chance that you might also have a great, have a really good graduate experience being advised by one of the other CDSC faculty members who's here. Pretty good chance. And so take a look at doing that. Consider applying to Purdue or Texas or Northwestern, or maybe even a different program at the University of Washington in addition to it. So that's my the one thing that I want to say at this meeting, which may touch on a few of the questions that people have answered. Now, if you want to know which program at University of Washington might be a better match, send me an email. I think that's going to be hard to answer on a general case, but on a case-by-case basis, I'm happy to help work through it, and I'm sure the other faculty can do that for their programs.
We just underscore that many universities around the world right now are, but particularly in the United States, are for a variety of reasons contracting the number of PhD slots they make available to programs. So unfortunately, there's nothing we as individual faculty can usually do to control or mitigate this. And we usually do our best to advocate for slots for students, applicants who we think would make amazing contributions to our field and to the lab and to the work in the areas that we think are important. But, especially at a time when there's more scarcity around universities, it can be hard to win those conversations. So yeah, just kind of reiterating and adding another dimension to part of what Mako said. And I don't say that to scare people or put you off from applying. I know Northwestern is planning to admit doctoral students this year, and will fund everybody they admit, that kind of thing. Just that's the situations that we're in right now, and it's the reality of it. So.
And I mean, I can say that for myself, I am planning to advocate for strong, students who wouldn't be CDSC members in one or maybe even multiple of the different programs that I'm associated with at the University of Washington. But I'm sure that that at least in one of those programs, and I think there's a chance that we won't be able to admit any students, right? So if you only apply to one program at one place, I think that there's a chance that just due to certain kinds of issues, that may be a strategic, it's a big risk. So.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, maybe, oh, yeah. Oh, it looks like Kaylee started to answer. I don't know, Kaylee, do you want to give a verbal answer to the question you just wrote?
Sure. So the question was, how does collaboration work? And I think Matt's slide actually gave a really great example of some of what this can look like. So Matt's at Northwestern, but we had a chance to work together on several projects. I had an idea and I did some work on it, and Matt thought it was cool, and Matt did some work on it, and I had things to go into Matt's work, and Matt had ideas to go into my work, and sort of informal in some ways. It evolves based on our interests, but it's heavily supported by the PIs in the group. And now that I'm a PI in the group, I heavily support it for my students as well. So unlike in, I guess, other labs maybe where kind of the advisor is very much the boss and can often just sort of tell people what to do in a very dictatorial kind of way, that isn't how we work here. We work as peers across institutions, and it's not a big deal that I was at UW Seattle and Mao was at Northwestern, and Sohyun was at first at Northwestern and now at Princeton. These things follow our research interests, and we work together in ways that make sense for the projects that we're trying to do. So I don't know if that answers the question or if there's other concerns people have. I think it's kind of it's a broad question. Like, how does collaboration work? Like, you get together, you have ideas, and you write stuff and you do stuff. But like, that's maybe not what people are asking. So I'm happy to dig into that further if people have specific questions. Thanks.
Please, Hyunju.
Okay. Okay, first of all, thank you so much for organizing this webinar and giving us the opportunity to learn more about the CDSC's agenda. And I have pretty inspired by the article related to peer production in online, especially the Wikipedia that you wrote. And this was pretty inspired. I was pretty inspired, and the methodology that you used was quite interesting. And the thing is that in my own work, I have developed the NLP pipelines to combining web crawling, API-based harvesting, and custom modeling. And this whole work is towards the interactive visualization that reveal cultural differences in how communications express and access meaning in digital space. And my another projects are mostly connected with this approach and to engage the diverse stakeholders and encourage their participation. The thing is that for PhD students in your group, do you usually encourage them to focus on specific methodological approach? I can see that you use the quantitative and computational modeling, or do you prefer that just encourage them to develop the mixed method expertise, combining computational or qualitative, quantitative, and methods that they can use? I just wonder about it.
Yeah, go ahead, Mako. Did you?
So I'm trying to make sure I got the question in there. Like, I think that if the question is like, what kinds of methodologies or approaches do we encourage? I think that the answer, I think that hopefully I hope that you saw some of this in the presentations. I think that most of the work that folks do, or at least much of the work that folks do in the group, has some sort of like computational or sort of quantitative angle. But I think that it's not exclusive. I think that there are absolutely there's work that folks do in the group that are the development of new sort of like computational methods, right? So I think that like Nate DeBlantice, for example, has created some like new techniques for doing like measurement error in the context of and for correcting for measurement error in the context of using machine learning classifiers for measurement, right? It's new methodological development, right? I think that there's lots of work where we have large pipeline, like sort of things like an NLP pipeline that results in a set of simple, like a set of like, to create measures, right, that are used in like what look like more traditional sort of like statistical analyses, things like regression. And there's work like the work that Zareen presented that is, or that other folks have in the group have done. I'm sitting next to Charlie Keene, who finished a PhD in the group last year, and whose dissertation work was interview-based and qualitative, right? And this was cooperative with a lot of people in the group. So I think that we're actually very pluralistic in terms of methods. I think that most people in the group do a combination of things, and I think even like Charlie's work, for example, did some computational work to help collect data sets, which helped identify people to choose for interviews. So I think that we're very pluralistic in that method, and we're in terms of methods, and we use a range of kinds of things. So that would be my. And happy to talk about the details, but yeah, I think that if you're already coming with a set of computational or statistical like tools, I think that that's great. I think that if you are not, I think that the good news is the graduate school is school, and I think that every one of our programs will require that you learn that has some sort of method requirement, and you will learn methods along the way, and you will definitely get better at doing these things through the process of doing research.
Thanks so much.